It had just started raining as I got off the highway, light at first, then heavier, the kind of steady rain that taps on your windshield like it's trying to talk to you. I turned onto my street, the same quiet suburban block I'd driven down almost every day for the last 6 years. Everything looked exactly as it should, the well-kept lawns, the trimmed hedges, the driveway lights blinking through the blur. But even with all that familiarity, I couldn't shake this weird feeling tightening in my chest. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. That was the plan. The work trip to Milwaukee ended earlier than expected, clients happy, deals closed, and I figured, hey, why not do something spontaneous for once? You know, like in the movies, show up early and sweep your wife off her feet. I had this whole picture in my head of how it'd go, her smile when she opened the door, maybe a surprised laugh, maybe she'd throw her arms around me like she used to. Just me, soaked from the rain, suitcase in hand, bringing a little spark back home. But the second I pulled into the driveway, that feeling in my gut started whispering louder. The lights in the house were on, not weird by itself. But the blinds in the living room, they were pulled shut. Not just turned, but tightly closed, like someone was deliberately keeping the inside from being seen. That wasn't normal. I stepped out of the car slowly, shut the door gently. No rush. I stood under the little overhang by the front door for a second, listening. No music. No TV. No footsteps upstairs. Just rain on the roof and that weird, nagging stillness. I slid my key into the lock and opened the door. Smooth, quiet, nothing strange there. But the smell hit me right away. Lavender, and something else. Something sharper. Not her shampoo. Not my cologne either. More like someone else's scent. Some other man's, maybe. Inside the house, everything looked spotless. Too spotless. Like it had just been cleaned for an open house or an inspection. The couch cushions were lined up just right. The rug had vacuum lines still fresh. A candle flickered on the coffee table, one of those half-burned ones she never bothered with unless someone was coming over. "Emily!" I called out, letting the door shut behind me. There was a beat. A pause. Maybe 2 seconds, tops, but enough to make my brain hit record. Then I heard her voice upstairs. "Tyler, you're back already." I tried to read something in her tone, surprise, annoyance, maybe panic, but it was too smooth. Almost like she'd practiced it. I dropped my bag near the coat rack and kept my voice calm. "Yeah. Meeting wrapped early. Figured I'd surprise you." She let out a little laugh, light and breezy. "Well, consider me surprised. I was just getting ready for bed." That made me pause. It wasn't even 9 yet. Emily's never been the type to sleep early. Especially not on a Friday night. I walked into the kitchen. Pristine. Everything put away. Nothing in the dish rack. A single wine glass sat by the sink, still damp, next to a bottle of Merlot, half gone. I touched the glass. The stem still held some warmth. Lipstick on the rim, a bold red. Not her usual shade. Then I saw it. Behind the faucet, tucked out of sight, was a second glass. Washed. Still had a drop of water beading at the bottom. It didn't match the first one. One of the old ones we barely used anymore. My stomach clenched. "You have a glass of wine?" I called up. "Yeah," she answered. "Just one. Rough day." "Yeah, you could say that." There was a hesitation before she said it. Barely noticeable. But it was there. I opened the fridge. Some of the leftovers that were supposed to be there, missing. The trash had been emptied, the liner brand new. Smelled like lemon. Everything felt staged. I headed upstairs. Slowly. One step at a time, like I was walking through a house I no longer recognized. The hallway was dim. Only the bedroom light seeped out from under the door. I pushed it open. She was sitting up in bed, wearing one of my old hoodies, something she hadn't touched in months. Laptop on her knees, a book beside her. When she saw me, she smiled. "Welcome home," she said, like it was just any other night. But her smile didn't touch her eyes. I noticed the details. No makeup, her hair still damp like she'd just showered. But the bathroom door was open, no steam, no scent of her usual vanilla body wash. I gave her a tired smile and sat down on the edge of the bed. "Missed you," she said, closing the laptop. Her hand reached for mine. "Cold?" Emily's hands were never cold. "Missed you too," I replied, my voice low. I glanced around the room again, the sheets tucked too neatly, the pillows a little too perfect. It all looked posed. Like a set piece. Like a lie dressed up in comfort. And my instincts, they weren't yelling. They were whispering. Something was off. The next morning started like any other, at least on the surface. I stood by the bedroom window, holding a mug of coffee, pretending to enjoy the morning light as it crawled across the grass. The air was still, almost too still. Emily was in the shower, humming something light, probably a song she didn't even know the words to. Her voice drifted out through the half-closed door, soft and casual, like everything was fine. Like nothing had changed. But I couldn't stop thinking about last night, the scent in the house, that unfamiliar wine glass, the lipstick that wasn't hers. The way everything had felt, arranged. It wasn't lived in. It was presented. Like the house had been preparing to pass a test I wasn't supposed to know about. And there was one more thing I couldn't forget. That cologne. Not mine. Not hers. That smell still clung faintly in the air like a memory that refused to fade. I knew it didn't belong here. That's when something clicked. A memory. I'd watched a crime documentary months ago, one of those forensic shows that plays late at night when you can't sleep. A specialist had talked about ultraviolet light and how it could uncover smudges, fluids, fingerprints, things that weren't visible to the naked eye. At the time, I thought it was cool. But now, it felt like a clue. A lead. A weapon. That afternoon, I told Emily I had some errands to run. Nothing specific. Just work stuff. She didn't ask many questions. In fact, she almost looked relieved. Instead of going to any store related to my job, I drove out of town, 20 minutes, maybe more, to this electronics shop I'd used once during a home remodel. Quiet little place. No questions asked. Just parts, tools, gear. I walked in and asked for a UV flashlight, one with a wider beam and higher wavelength. The guy didn't even blink. He rang me up, handed over the box, and wished me a good evening like I was buying a pack of batteries. I got home and acted like everything was normal. We made dinner together, pasta, some store-bought sauce she doctored with garlic and basil, a salad that had way too much dressing. She talked a lot, about clients, some charity gala she was thinking of going to, maybe a spa day with her sister. The words came easy, light and breezy, but her eyes never fully settled on mine. They flitted around the room like she was keeping watch for something else. Or someone. I smiled. I laughed in the right spots. I asked follow-ups and nodded at the right times. But inside, I was watching the clock. Waiting for nightfall. Waiting for silence. By the time it hit 2:13 a.m., the house was dead quiet. Emily was asleep next to me, her breath slow and steady. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, my body still but my mind racing. I slipped out of bed like I'd rehearsed it, careful not to make the mattress creak. My bare feet touched the floor, cold against the wood. I walked to the office, pulled open the bottom drawer of my desk, and retrieved the flashlight. I'd wrapped it in an old t-shirt to muffle any sound. Back in the bedroom, I stood at the edge of the bed, heart pounding so loud I swore she could hear it. I clicked the light on. The glow was soft, that eerie violet hue that made everything else feel like a ghost. I scanned the sheets. Nothing at first. Then, at the corner of my pillow, a faint smear. A streak across the fabric, glowing like a secret trying to speak. I didn't react. Not yet. I moved across the bed. The fitted sheet had more, small marks, scattered. Some were darker. Some overlapped. None of it made sense if it was just the two of us. None of it looked like sleep. And then I turned the beam to her side of the bed. There it was. A large blotch. Not faded. Not small. Bright. Obvious. Unmistakable. I stepped back, aiming the light down to the carpet. By the window, near the baseboard, I found a faint handprint, pressed there, smudged. Desperate. And another on the side of the nightstand, as if someone had stumbled or braced themselves. It painted a story. One no one had spoken aloud. A story I wasn't supposed to know. I stood there in the center of our bedroom, surrounded by silence and stain and things that couldn't be unseen. I turned off the flashlight. Let the room fall back into darkness. But now it was different. Heavier. The kind of darkness that makes you feel like the house itself is holding its breath. Emily stirred behind me, murmuring something in her sleep, completely unaware of what I now knew. I sat down on the edge of the bed again, same spot as earlier. And I waited. Morning came slow, like the sun wasn't quite sure it wanted to show up. I was already downstairs by the time it peeked through the blinds, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold in my hands. I hadn't slept. Not even a little. I just sat there, thinking, remembering every detail from the night before. Emily was still upstairs, probably asleep, or pretending to be. And honestly, I didn't care which. I couldn't stop replaying what I saw. The smears on the sheet. The prints on the carpet. The glow of the ultraviolet light showing me things I'd never be able to forget. But it wasn't just that. It was the silence that really got me. The too clean trash can. The lemon-scented liner, fresh and empty like we hadn't had dinner at all. That was what messed me up more than anything. Something wasn't just off. Something had happened. And someone had gone out of their way to cover it up. I stood up and walked over to the trash bin again. I'd already looked once, but this time I really paid attention. It felt too light. I slid it out, careful, slow, and peeled back the edges of the bag. The inside rim, spotless, like it had just been wiped down. Then I reached lower. There, down at the very bottom, between the liner and the can itself, someone had missed a spot. A crumpled paper towel. Stained. I pulled it out and looked at it under the kitchen light. Lipstick. Bright red. Not pink, not nude, not anything Emily owned. This wasn't hers. Two distinct smears. One arched, one dragged. I set it aside, heart thudding but my hand steady. I reached back in. Another towel. Damp. Sticky. Then something else. Shiny. Small. A condom wrapper. And then another. And another. Buried under all that fake cleanliness was the truth. Sloppy, careless, disgusting truth. I found a cocktail napkin too, white with a gold W monogrammed in the corner. We didn't own anything like that. Then I hit something harder. Small. Flat. I pulled it out. A phone. Not mine. Definitely not Emily's. It was cracked across the screen, no case, nothing to identify it. Just fingerprints and what looked like a smear of lotion or maybe soap. I pressed the power button. Nothing. Dead. But my gut told me it wasn't just some forgotten burner. This thing mattered. This was a mistake someone made, a mistake that might crack this whole thing open. I wrapped the phone in a towel and stashed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. I didn't feel panic. Not yet. What I felt was colder, a kind of quiet focus. Like something inside me had just switched on and refused to turn back off. Footsteps upstairs. She was awake. I stood still, staring into the window above the sink. The man looking back at me didn't even look angry. He just looked awake. Really awake. For the first time in a long time. Emily came downstairs a few minutes later, barefoot in one of my old flannel shirts like we were still playing house. Her hair was damp again. Always with the damp hair lately. Morning, she said, all light and casual like we hadn't just spent the night in two completely different realities. Morning, I replied without turning. You want some coffee? I already made some. She poured herself a cup anyway, took a sip, and leaned against the counter like she did every Saturday morning before this whole thing started to rot from the inside out. Sleep okay? She asked. I looked at her, finally, and gave a slow nod. Yeah. You. She shrugged, blowing lightly over her mug. Tossed and turned. Weird dreams. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. She smiled. That same fake little smile I'd seen 1,000 times. A smile I used to believe in. I wondered right then how many other people had seen that same smile. How many of them thought it was meant just for them. How long it had all been fake. But I didn't show it. Not yet. I couldn't. Because the act wasn't over. The curtain hadn't fallen. Not yet. That afternoon, while Emily worked on design mock-ups at the dining table, I sat in my office pretending to sketch out plans for a lake house project I'd started weeks ago. But I wasn't thinking about lake views or building permits. I was thinking about the cracked phone hidden in the drawer beneath my hand. I'd already tried to power it up. Nothing. Charging it didn't help either. Still, I had a feeling the phone wasn't just a forgotten piece of junk. No one hides something like that unless it matters. And the way it was buried, almost wedged between the liner and the trash can itself, told me everything I needed to know. Someone thought they'd gotten away with it. But I was already steps ahead. That night, Emily was extra affectionate. She made lunch just the way I liked it: grilled chicken, arugula salad, light vinaigrette. She even laughed at my dumb joke about the neighbor's cat. For a second, it was like we were us again. But I knew better. Every word from her mouth felt rehearsed. Every touch came with a delay, like she was calculating how I might respond. When she went to the bathroom, her phone went with her. Always. That used to be nothing. Now it screamed everything. She was being careful, but not careful enough. Later that night, after she drifted off to sleep with her head on my chest, I slipped out of bed and crept down to the living room. The only light came from the hallway nightlight, casting shadows that made the house feel hollow. I opened my laptop and logged into the home security account. We'd set it up years ago, then forgot it existed. She hadn't checked it in months. But I had a feeling it still remembered everything. The front camera. Motion triggered. I scrolled through the footage, watching time speed by in jerky flashes. Morning mail. Afternoon Amazon drop-offs. A neighbor's kid riding his scooter. Then something different. 2 nights ago. 11:37 p.m. A dark sedan pulls up in front of our house. No headlights. A man gets out, athletic build, hoodie pulled low, familiar confidence in his stride. He doesn't knock. Doesn't hesitate. Just walks around the side of the house and out of view. My stomach turned. I clicked over to the backyard camera. There he was again. Crouched low. He tapped twice on the sliding glass door. Soft, rhythmic, practiced. 10 seconds later, the door opened. Emily. Barefoot, wearing a robe. She stepped aside and let him in like she'd done it 100 times. I stared at the screen, not moving, not breathing. I didn't hit rewind. Didn't need to. I shut the laptop and walked down the hall, into the guest bathroom. The one Emily never used. The second I walked in, the smell hit me, faint, but not mine. Cologne. Musky, fresh. Not cheap. I opened the cabinet under the sink. Behind a box of tissues was a bottle of men's body wash. Still full. Then something else, tucked near the baseboard behind the toilet. A pair of black athletic socks, rolled up loose, forgotten like the person who left them figured they'd be back soon. I held them in my hand. Still no anger. Just confirmation. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was reality. I stepped back into the hallway, turned off the light, and stood there for a while in the dark. The house no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage, and I was the only one in the audience who realized the play was a lie. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because if I blew up now, she'd just hide deeper. And I wanted her to keep playing her role, to keep smiling, to keep lying, to keep thinking I had no idea. Let her keep acting. Because soon, the final act was coming. The rain came back on Wednesday. That soft, steady kind of rain that usually made me want to curl up on the couch and listen to jazz with Emily. But not this time. This time, every drop felt like a ticking clock. Like time was running out and the truth was itching to be exposed. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror that morning, razor in hand, staring at the stubble on my jaw. I hadn't shaved in days. Not because I didn't feel like it, because I needed to see it. I needed to see the slow transformation happening in the reflection. The change in my eyes. The quiet calculation setting into my face. Emily was still asleep behind me, curled up under her favorite throw blanket like everything was still normal. She looked peaceful. Unbothered. But I knew better now. And I couldn't unknow it. I told her I had site visits that morning, a couple of clients who needed me on location. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted Thai for dinner. Sounds perfect, I told her, and smiled. I didn't go to any site visits. I drove 2 towns over to a tech repair shop I remembered from an old renovation job. Quiet little place, no storefront, no customer logbook, just a guy named Travis who worked with his head down and didn't ask too many questions. I handed him the cracked phone. "Water damage?" he asked, turning it over. "Just dropped," I said. "Think you can pull anything off it?" He nodded. "Depends how fried the board is. Give me some time." I waited in the corner of the shop, pretending to read a beat-up copy of Popular Mechanics, my brain flipping through images like a slideshow. Emily laughing in the backyard, the glow from the UV light, the stranger tapping on my door like he belonged. 45 minutes later, Travis came back out, holding a flash drive. "Phone's dead," he said. "Totally shot. But the memory chip's fine." I pulled what I could, photos, messages, some video files. I paid him in cash, thanked him, and walked out without another word. I didn't even open the flash drive until late that night. Emily was asleep upstairs, breathing soft, her body curled against mine like she still belonged there. I waited until I heard her snore, then slipped out of bed and into the garage. I kept the drive hidden behind a false panel in my tool chest. Locked the door. Dimmed the lights. Plugged it in. There were dozens of files, folders with dates, scrambled names, blurry photos. But the moment I opened the first video, I knew I was right. There she was. Emily. Laughing into someone's phone camera. Her robe barely hanging on her shoulders. Her eyes glassy from wine or something stronger. A man's voice off-screen called her, "baby." She giggled, leaned toward the camera, whispered something I couldn't hear, then turned away. I clicked through more. The same guy. Muscular. Tan. Cocky. In one picture, he was wearing one of my t-shirts. In another, he sat at my kitchen table, smiling like he lived there. And then there was another man. Younger. Tattoo sleeve down his right arm. I recognized the patio furniture in the background. I built it myself. In one shot, he had a whiskey glass in his hand, one with my initials etched in it. Emily sat in his lap, laughing like she was 19 again. It wasn't just one guy. It was at least 2. And now, I had names. One photo had a business card left on our nightstand. Derek Marshall. Personal trainer. I remembered him. She said he was helping her with core strength last fall. I'd shaken his hand. Watched him walk out of my house. The second guy. Tattooed, younger, maybe someone from a local gym. His t-shirt had a logo. I zoomed in. I'd find out more later. But the worst wasn't what they did. It was how Emily did it. She planned everything. She used a second phone. She cleaned up after every visit. She hid things, sure, but not well enough. They thought I'd never find out. But they left pieces behind. And I was collecting every single one. Later that evening, Emily made dinner. Real dinner, not microwave or delivery. Roasted garlic chicken, rosemary potatoes, even homemade bread. Jazz played in the background. She wore a silk apron like she was in a cooking show. The house smelled like comfort. But none of it reached me. Because I wasn't there to eat. I was watching her perform. She smiled at all the right moments. Poured wine like a sommelier. Nodded along when I told her some made-up story about a client looking to remodel his lake house. I said all the things I was supposed to say. She had no idea that I already knew every name, every time, every filthy little detail. She even offered to clean up after dinner. "You work too hard," she said, giving me that playful nudge. I let her. I sat in the living room, watching shadows crawl across the floor while she hummed in the kitchen. Everything was right on schedule. I pulled out my phone and sent 3 messages. No words. Just initials and timestamps. Everyone who got them knew exactly what to do. Then I stood up, walked back into the kitchen, and gave her a kiss on the forehead. "I was thinking," I said, keeping my voice light. "Let's have a get-together this weekend. Just a few friends. Something small." She blinked. "A party?" "Low-key," I said. "You've been saying we should reconnect with people." She hesitated. Just for a second. Then that perfect smile came back. "Sure," she said. "That could be fun." I nodded. "It'll be unforgettable." The party started just after 7. Soft jazz playing from the Bluetooth speaker in the corner, wine glasses clinking, laughter floating through the air like perfume. Emily looked radiant. Her makeup flawless, her dress hugging her like it was made just for this moment. She moved through the room like a true host, laughing at jokes, touching arms, complimenting everyone on everything. She thought it was her night. She thought it was hers to control. What she didn't know was that every step, every pore, every laugh was walking her closer to the edge of the stage, and I was the one pulling the curtain. The guests mingled in the living room, sipping Pinot and chatting about mutual friends and weekend plans. I stood near the back window, watching Emily pour a drink for a guest, someone she called D under her breath, though I already knew his real name, Derek Marshall. He arrived early, of course. Confident. Comfortable. Wore a button-up that didn't hide how much time he spent in the gym. She hugged him a little too long. Whispered something in his ear. He laughed like he was in on the joke. Then came the next one. Tattooed arm. Younger. Tyler, or Ty, as he liked to be called. Showed up with a six-pack and a cocky smirk. Emily's smile faltered for a half-second when she saw him, but she recovered like a pro. Introduced him to people like he was just some old friend. And then came the third. Jason Whitmore. Our financial advisor. The man who had sat at our dining table and helped plan our retirement, who looked me in the eye and told me we were making smart choices. That guy walked in holding a bottle of wine and a lie behind his smile. I greeted them all with handshakes and jokes, toasts and easy laughs. I made them feel welcome, like they belonged. And Emily, she moved between them like a tightrope walker over fire. Then it hit 8:23 p.m. The music stopped. Not faded. Cut. People turned, confused. Emily looked at me. Tyler. But I was already walking to the middle of the room. Come. Steady. Like I had done it before. I picked up the remote. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," I said. My voice was smooth, steady. "It means a lot to me. To us. It's a special occasion." Emily stepped forward, panic slowly replacing her smile. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I pressed play. The TV above the fireplace flickered to life. At first, just a still image, the backyard camera. Derek walking through the side gate, hoodie up, confident. Then Ty on the patio, beer in hand, Emily on his lap. A kiss. A laugh. Her laugh. Then Jason. Shirt half untucked, Emily pulling him toward the guest bathroom, her robe hanging just low enough to leave nothing to question. Gasps. A glass shattered in the kitchen. Someone sobbed. Jason's +1, maybe. The room turned into stone. No one moved. Emily. Frozen. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I turned to the crowd. "I want to apologize. Some of you thought this was a party. What you got instead was clarity." Silence. Then Emily moved toward me, her voice broken, shaking. "Tyler, please. You don't understand." "I do," I said. "I understand everything. I was there. Every time. Right outside the door. Just behind the wall. I was watching my life fall apart while you smiled and pretended it was fine." She reached for my hand. I stepped back. "Don't." Her face crumbled. "Please." But I was done. Guests started leaving. Quiet at first, then a few more rushed out. Derek disappeared before I even noticed. Ty slammed the door on his way out. Jason didn't say a word, just walked past me like I was invisible. Emily collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Alone. I walked to the door, opened it, and let the night air drift in. Behind me, the house was silent. No music. No chatter. Just the echo of a truth that had finally been dragged out into the open. I didn't look back. The next morning, the house was a shell. Quiet. Still. Like whatever had been holding it together had finally snapped. I sat at the kitchen table again, coffee cold in my hands. This time, I wasn't waiting for anything. Just listening to the silence. Letting it settle in. Emily hadn't come downstairs. Her door was closed. I hadn't opened it since the night before. Eventually, I went to the garage, pulled out the black folder I'd kept hidden. Inside, photos, names, proof. All of it. I took out the pictures. One of each man. I laid them out on the workbench. Then I lit them on fire. Watched them curl and turn to ash. I swept the remains into a tin and tucked it away. It was over. Back inside, the house felt smaller. I climbed the stairs and opened the bedroom door. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, still in last night's dress. Her makeup streaked, her eyes hollow. She looked at me like she wanted to say something. But there was nothing left to say. I packed slowly. Not in anger. Not in revenge. Just done. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she whispered. I folded a shirt. It always goes farther than you think. I was lonely, she said. You were distant. I thought. I was building a life, I cut in. She flinched. I zipped the bag and turned to go. Are you leaving me? She asked. I paused. No, I said quietly. You already did that. And I walked out. Downstairs, I grabbed my keys, stepped into the gray morning, and got in the car. The engine started with a low hum, and I pulled out of the driveway one last time. In the rearview mirror, the house faded into the distance, just another quiet home on a perfect street. But I knew better. That house had been the stage. And last night, the curtain finally fell. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.